Good evening, I'm Berkenda, the Orange Chamber of Commerce's Vice Chair of Events. Tonight we have our very first evening in Orange with our special guest, Mayor Mark Murphy. Before we really get started, I want to remind you, so normally we're on Zoom, we're virtual, it's our first time being in the studio in such a long time. However, you can still ask questions and they are encouraged. So go ahead and type those on Facebook. We'll go ahead and have our moderators get those to me right here on my tablet. So before I head into introductions, I'd like to thank Southern California Edison, our Chairman's Circle members, and also Communications Lab for letting us use their studio tonight. Well, without further ado, Mayor Mark Murphy, it is so amazing to have you. You were our very first guest, I would say, on our Zoom virtual segments that we started hosting back in April. Seems like forever ago. I feel like it was a very somber time. That was about 6 weeks into the pandemic. Things were very uncertain. And I honestly feel like tonight we're in a much better place. We have a lot of bright outlook. So thank you so much for coming. How are you?
I'm great. It's nice to be face to face with somebody, socially distanced and safe.
Yes, of course.
But it's nice to be face to face and talk a little bit about the city of Orange, the great things that are going on, the great people and businesses in the city. And you're absolutely right. Last April, I think it was the uncertainty and the lack of information when we first started this, because we were walking into something or progressing into something we'd never experienced before. At least most of us. We have a few 100-year-olds that remembered the last go-round, but
right.
All things considered, especially from a leadership standpoint and the rest, this was all new ground. And first and foremost, I want to say a thank you, if I could, if we'll go off script just a little bit.
You can.
And I want to say thank you to the residents, the businesses, and everyone affiliated with the city of Orange, whether you're in a service role, whether you're in business, whether you're in the schools. No matter what your role is, I want to say thank you, because we had to ask you to do a lot of things differently, stop a lot of things, and do things that we just never have done before. The idea of not getting together at the holidays, the idea of not socializing on the 4th of July, and on and on and on. Don't go to school, don't go to work, don't sit down to have a meal. All those things. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the patience and the willingness to do what it takes to get healthy, to stay healthy, and to look out for each other. So first and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you before we went any further.
Very appropriate, because we do appreciate it. Everyone has had such an upheaval of life, so thank you so much for mentioning that.
Sure.
Well, looking back at the last 15 months, what have been the biggest challenges, and have there been any surprises?
I think having to go virtual on most everything and anything, whether it be meetings for public meetings, whether it be planning sessions, whether it be services, whether it be appointments. I mean, I'm sure many of us have had doctor's appointments where we've done it virtually, but this whole appreciation, a year ago, I'm not sure what the percentages were of people that had ever done a Zoom call or a Teams call or a GoToMeeting call or a virtual call of any sort, maybe FaceTime, right?
Right.
But that has all changed dramatically. We weren't certain how to start, so we went to our crisis center. We put together a plan.
Okay.
We immediately followed the state's direction in terms of locking things down. Then we look for creative ways to move forward. I'm really proud of the fact that we opened City Hall back up for operations safely on May the 11th,
Okay.
2020. We were early in that process, but we figured out ways to make certain to keep people safe, but allow business to continue, because the really disarming thing about this were two things: our public health, our personal health and safety, but secondly, the effects on business.
Right.
And the chamber has certainly been active from the very beginning on that score. And, we continued to look for ways to go about doing that. And I know we'll talk more about that later. But after we did the crisis and the rest, we also put together meetings to reach out and to coordinate our different levels of government, as well as the health officials and the rest, and sat down in meetings and worked out what can we do now that we haven't been doing before? What are we learning along the way that we can do better moving forward? And to ensure that we were collectively working in the best interests of the city, the county, and the state. And so those forged some new relationships. I mean, even the mayors, this is a minor thing in the grand scheme of things, but Miguel Polito over in Santa Ana gave me a call and said, hey, what do you think about putting together a call of all the mayors in Orange County? There's 34 of us.
Right.
Many of us serve one-year terms. Some of us are directly elected. Some of us do rotations, et cetera. But within a month, we established a call on one evening a week and just did comparisons, what's working, what's not, and also talked about things that we could collectively reach out and talk to state and federal officials about in terms of Orange County with 3.3 million people.
Right.
A sizable entity went together, and certainly the power of that, the synergy of that, I believe helped improve things much more quickly on that basis. We continued that call. Miguel has retired. I am now chairing that call these days, and we have new mayors in that have started the first of the year, but we also have some of the mayors that rotated out on their rotational basis that continue to attend and lend their experience and recommendations. So we do comparisons and contrasts to this day and talk about, hey, what's working, what isn't. Hey, I need help with getting the pools open, let's say, for sake of example.
Right.
Youth sports. I mean, you can imagine all the topics that might come forward on that end of things.
That sounds amazing, just because I feel like perhaps pre-pandemic things were pretty siloed as far as the different cities, just because everyone's busy running their city. We're all of us, city, chamber, everyone, we're all doing our own thing, but to come together when everyone's really focused on a common goal must have been great.
Yeah, and I mean, we have organizations. ACCOC is a great organization that keeps us collectively aware of what's going on in the community and what's going on at the state and federal levels, helps us lobby, et cetera, et cetera. But there's no substitute for having a relationship, albeit virtual, to start. I mean, we laughed last year. The only time all 34 mayors were together was when we shot a video about wearing your mask. And all 34 of us were in one place, socially distanced, for the final shot of that video. But other than that, none of us had met face to face during the beginnings of the calls and the rest. And it was fascinating to say hi to people directly, kind of like what we talked about at the beginning of the call from that end of things. So that's another example. One more thing that I have to mention is Orange loves its community events, and that's something that we really missed last year, as I mentioned in the thank yous. And our staff immediately started to put virtual versions together of these events so that people could at least enjoy it in the family home, or remember some things that have happened other times. We put together some vignettes of former 3rds of July, former tree lighting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because we wanted to keep that continuity of the community together, even if it's strictly online rather than face to face. We had a flyover on the 4th of July that received a lot of accolades and the rest too. So you just do the things you think about. You also do the things that you see recommended and are working other places. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. And so you try and put things together, adapt. You have to pivot. You do what you can do from that end of things. And actually, we're fortunate tonight to have some video interviews from some great folks and great organizations in the city of Orange. And this first video that's coming up is an individual. He's a former Citizen of the Year in the city of Orange, longtime business person, and his family business, I think, stretches more than 50 years. And he is Mike Leorakis from Catella Grill, as well as Waste Not OC. And if we can, let's share his interview right now and talk.
We've been here for 28 years. Orange County restaurateurs for over 50 years. And Hi, I'm Mike Leorakis. I own Catella Grill here in the city of Orange. I'm also the executive director of Waste Not OC, now known as Abound Food Care. I was born and raised in the city of Orange. I've never lived anywhere else. So this started as a way of having a local community restaurant that made food from scratch, but also served the community. The impact of COVID for us was that it changed everything immediately, overnight, and it was important for us to be able to pivot. Luckily, there was a need. We saw the ability to prepare emergency meals for our community, vacuum seal them, package them, blast freeze them, which extends the shelf life. And we spent all of COVID moving food around to nonprofit organizations, helping really kind of optimize the food supply chain for those who were really struggling and in need. Catella Grill, we always determined that our marketing was going to be participation in the community. And in doing that, if you can support community efforts, nonprofit efforts, then that's a win-win. And that's always been our goal. So it made it for an easy transition once COVID hit, because that's what we've always done. So the ability to serve people was inherent in what we did as our community outreach. It was really important for us to be able to maneuver as we come out of COVID. Are people going to take some of these changes that we've made and stick with them? Or are they willing to just get right back to the way they kind of lived before COVID hit? It's really going to be interesting. We started Waste Not OC in 2012 as a way of recovering excess edible food and diverting it to nonprofit pantries, agencies that feed people. The city of Orange was one of our pilot cities. Who knew back then that it would become the nation's most effective food recovery program? And it's now gone national. It's now Abound Food Care. And we are working throughout the country, working with not only food industry, but also all these various nonprofit agencies, helping them get additional resources and be more efficient in getting food to the people that need it most. I'm kind of biased because I was born and raised here. I've never lived a day outside of the city of Orange. Orange is a unique, unique community.
We are so fortunate to have people like Mike in our community, Catella Grill, Waste Not OC, I guess now Abound Food Care. So Thank you so much, Mike, for all that you guys do.
Thanks, Mike. You know, one other thing that I neglected to mention, and we will certainly get to more of this later on, but one other big change last year, and it's not pandemic related at all, is we had an election last year among everything else, and we've moved to a district representation with 6 districts. And then the mayor, myself, elected at large, meaning not my size, but over the whole city of Orange, right?
Yes.
And that was a first as well during the pandemic and the rest, with all the rest of the things going on. And it kind of makes a point in the fact that during this pandemic, everyone involved at whatever level of service, they're not being asked to just do their job. They're being asked to do more than their job, with dealing with the pandemic and the safety issues, as well as everything else. You have a pandemic, fine, you have to deal with that, but you still have to have police and fire service, you still have to have public works, you still have to have library services, park services, community services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Trash pickup, the beat goes on, right? So I think that's incredibly important to recognize, and that's no different than in private industry as well. I mean, so much of the industry has had to pivot, figure out different ways to do things in order to try and survive during this pandemic.
You are absolutely correct. That's one of the things that I think has been a common thread for many conversations, is that the pandemic was here, but so are the fires, so are the emergencies, like all the other things that normally affect us still happened. And so people have really risen above, which is amazing. Well, let's talk a bit about Orange business community. That's why we're here. We love our Orange businesses. How do you feel they're surviving this pandemic?
Well, I think they're doing well, as can be expected. I don't want to minimize the challenge and the fact that some businesses are having to close and not able to operate given the limitations and the rest. And again, I mean, whether you think about Mike Leorakis and his comments about pivoting his businesses and approaching things a different way, that goes on every day, every business in town, as well as other organizations, nonprofits, and the rest. You know, we put together an outdoor retail and dining ordinance that basically relaxed the regulations at the time that we were allowed to dine outside, and that's come and gone a couple of times. And again, my thanks to those that have survived through all of those types of things. And sometimes under challenges as well, nice things occur and good things occur, not only in human service, but also ideas that maybe wouldn't have been tried before.
Right.
And one of those in my mind is the Paseo downtown at the plaza, where we've closed off Glassell on both sides of the plaza, as well as provided some seating in a couple of the quadrants of the plaza. And the idea with that, of course, was to provide outdoor space, since indoor dining has been regulated, limited, or eliminated, depending on what time of year you're talking about over the last 12 or 15 months. But as and when it is legal to dine outside, we wanted to provide a venue for businesses to be able to take their business outside, whether it be restaurants, retail, or the rest, and then provide them space to do so. I had been lobbied for a long time, or at least asked about the fact, gosh, think about when you visited Italy. These grand paseos and these grand piazzas that you visit, and wouldn't it be neat if the plaza downtown had that? And at the time, I must admit, I thought it sounded great, but I really wasn't comfortable in thinking about any sort of temporary closure above and beyond the International Street Fair and the car shows and those sorts of things. But with the challenges and with the things that were going on, to me, we had to do what we could to help those businesses all over the city. And so with the emergency ordinance for dining, it allowed parking lots everywhere adjacent to restaurants and to businesses to be used with the concurrence of the owners of those lots if you happen to be a tenant and a landlord. But I never heard of anybody being told no if they asked and wanted to put that together. And that had been one of the linchpins that really seemed to provide a lifeline, if you will, for businesses. The other, and even early on back in those dark days of April and May, the chamber stepped up and coordinated with a number of restaurants and did the drive up, take out, and save promotions.
Yes, we've seen you on those.
where these businesses, and many of whom weren't doing much in the way of takeout previously, were doing that and providing an incentive for people to try the takeout service with those different individuals. And the chamber spearheaded that particular activity as well, and it was well received. But we really wanted, as soon as it was legal, to provide that outdoor space, and I would say the response to it has been nothing short of extraordinary. I can count on one hand the complaints I've received, and they were all centered around, mostly centered around buses being redirected.
Okay.
And I'm happy to say that was, I won't say resolved, but corrected earlier this week. The buses are now on a new route that minimizes the exposure to neighborhoods versus staying within the commercial areas to get around the stoppages at the plaza on Glassell.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing some thumbs up even from those that maybe were concerned, given that they didn't like buses in front of their house all the time. And I get that. Nobody really wants to to do that 100% of the time for certain. But other things that have happened along the way. Don Wagner, our good supervisor, speaking of coordination at multiple levels of government, he took the Small Business Assistance Program and the CARES Act funds, got them directly to the City of Orange and allowed us to manage them rather than going through a multiple level process for distribution. That's a technical term of saying 3 levels of government to hand you a check, right?
Right. And I think we all appreciate that for sure.
Exactly. But this way, timing's of the essence, right? The business community, everybody knows, but the businesses especially know that timing is everything, and that value of time versus deferring for weeks for administrative type situation. Don just said, no, we're not doing it that way, and literally the funds were released on a Wednesday, and on a Friday, that same Friday, he came and delivered a check to me at City Hall for, I think it was, it was $4.1 million.
Okay.
And those went in small business grants and assistance for both keeping employees employed, helping with rent, et cetera, all went to businesses in the city of Orange. And I want to make a special mention again of Supervisor Wagner and his teaming approach along with his staff to again do what we can do rather than being hung up on what we can't do in terms of helping businesses and helping the community. It's really been special. I mentioned talking to health care and the health services in the city as a part of this as well. And we'd always had great relationships with our health providers.
Okay.
Providence, St. Joseph's Hospital, Chau Hospital, UCI, and the rest. But we've continued these discussions along the way, and one of the opportunities that presented itself out of it, and this is really a win-win-win all the way through as far as I'm concerned. Providence, St. Joseph's is putting together a purchasing entity, and they've decided to host that in the city of Orange. And they've teamed with the city of Orange to provide that. So while they had choices, several choices to go, they decided to host it in the city of Orange, and it will contribute significant sales tax to the bottom line for the city to provide additional city services and the rest. And there's another great example where teaming and that synergy of teaming with business and with our health community and the rest is going to make things better in the city of Orange.
Well, that's really exciting.
Yeah,
I think we really do a good job of partnering. I mean, just looking at different cities, everyone has their own dynamic, but I really feel that we are especially good at it. And that's attributed a lot to you. You've been at the helm for a bit, so thank you.
Well, I'd say it's more about the people in the community. You know, have the good fortune of being mayor of my hometown. You know, I'm a native, and people probably get tired of hearing that, but only the ones that aren't natives get tired of hearing it. Is my personal opinion, right? But you know, this community has a sense of community,
right?
And when things are tough, people step up to the challenge, and you've seen great examples of that over and over and over again. In fact, you know, it reminds me, because I think we have another interview here coming up. In fact, I know we do, with Home Depot. And Home Depot was the large business of the year for the Chamber of Commerce, right?
That's correct.
And so I thought it was great to go out and interview and talk to the store manager out there, Mr. Ramirez, and hear a little bit about what they've done in the community and what they're continuing to do in the community. And that's that teaming thing that you mentioned earlier, and here's just another great example of it.
All right, let's watch it.
Hi, I'm Rudy Ramirez, store manager at the East Orange Home Depot. In terms of how Home Depot stayed with the community through COVID, so we are an essential retailer. So just being here for the community, making sure we have the products in stock that they need to help them feel safe. And still here, we're still helping the community. We're still hiring in from the community to make sure we have enough associates to help with our customers. Being with Home Depot, they do allow us to do a lot of work with our communities. We do a lot of work with the Community Foundation of Orange. As far as donations, we can donate material, we can do cash donations. We've sent people out in our Team Depot projects to do some veteran work around the community. There's definitely a lot of stuff that Home Depot allows us to do. And as far as being selected Large Business of the Year, it definitely was an honor for myself, for my associates, and just to show that the appreciation from the community. We were a very proud moment when we had that. What I personally love about Orange, it's a very diverse crowd. Working with the community every day, you kind of get that family feel being in the city of Orange. Our doors are always open, and we're always here for the community, and if you need anything that we can help you with, we will be there for you.
Well, thank you again, Home Depot, for all that you're doing for the community. I know that especially in the beginning of the pandemic, you were there to help us get heaters out to people at a discount, a large toilet paper donation, and actually during our break I had something just come in, and that is that we received a large donation from you guys through our Orange Chamber Cares of KN95 masks that will be going over to the Children's Hospital, to Chau. So thank you so much.
It's another great example of teaming, and it's back to healthcare and the business community and everybody working together to keep us safe, to keep us healthy. And I can't think of a better place for those to go than Children's Hospital, Orange County. they continue to do really miracle work.
They do.
Day in, day out, 365 days a year, and it's just an extraordinary service that we have right here in the city of Orange.
Definitely. Well, let's talk a bit about finances. So, how is the city doing financially during the pandemic, and what are you forecasting for the next year?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? So let's go back to February last year.
Okay.
And we're operating along very well. We're projecting about a $5 million surplus.
Okay.
On a budget of, call it $120 million round numbers. And sales tax is ahead of schedule. Everything's clicking on all cylinders. Businesses are doing great. Everything's good. All of a sudden, the pandemic hits. 6 weeks later, because remember, governmental budgets begin July 1, right?
Correct.
So we're right in the midst of budget planning. 6 to 8 weeks later, we get our first projections in, and we're suddenly at a $16.5 million deficit for that next year's budget. So a $21.5 million change, pivot, whatever you want to call it, literally in 8 weeks. And as the pandemic goes, you have to be conservative in your business, you have to be conservative in government, and you have to project what you really think is going to happen, not what you hope is going to happen. I mean, I was in sales for a long time, and I remember hoping that I was going to make my quota, and those years didn't pay nearly as well as the years that I made my quota, right? Or my bonus in some respects. So, was the situation. Really yeoman's effort among the entire city staff. Every employee, every manager, every executive put their heads down and figured out a way to shorten the gap on this budget. And we finished up with about an $8 million deficit for this current operating year.
Okay.
Now, the good news is the city of Orange is on the conservative side, and we saved money for a rainy day. We just didn't know it was going to be quite this big a typhoon. But we had the money and which allowed us not to have to do layoffs.
Okay, that's good.
But I want to point out, part of that reason we could do that is, and when I mentioned employees chipping in, all of the bargaining units voluntarily came forward and deferred pay to be able to stay and to make sure everybody got to stay. And that's just extraordinary. You just don't see that happening. Now, in private industry, I know there were lots of cutbacks.
Right.
I know there was lots of challenges and the rest, and I'm certainly not immune to that. But in government agencies and the rest, being able to weather this storm and do it because we've been prudent in the past, and my thanks to predecessors of mine that put that money away, right?
Right.
We were able to weather the storm. And in fact, I think we're going to turn out a little better than we had forecasted. In other words, maybe we were a little bit too conservative, which makes that gap go down even more. And we just took a look at our current or our next year's budget. We just took the first pass at it last night, and the deficit numbers appear to be much smaller to start, which means we'll get to a balanced budget for this year. Now, there are funds coming in, federal aid funds and the rest, and we will prioritize by restoring the reserves and the rest that we had from before, just like any private entity would.
Right.
And then as well, we've done some things to prepare ourselves for future ups and downs as well that we will fund as well. But overall, it was a challenge, and I certainly want to say thanks again to all the City of Orange staff and led by City Manager Rick Otto and City Attorney Gary Sheets, all the department heads and the rest, because without them doing what they did, it would have been much more significant, and there would have been much more service cuts required from that end as well. Let's talk a little bit about public safety, if it's all right. Speaking of things that absolutely have to work as we move forward, how many calls do you think the fire department responded to during this last year?
Oh, goodness. I used to know the answer to this, but I don't know.
Got any guess? almost 15,000
I was
calls.
going to say 7, so I was way off.
Almost 15,000 calls spread across 8 stations. So they are a busy bunch. But that isn't the only calls they got. They got calls from the state of California, and they dispatched people to 27 wildland fire locations as well. Above and beyond the service call in Orange, they got the higher call from the state of California as well, and went and did it on that end of things. Another interesting angle that most people maybe don't know is they also were part of the team that trained and prepared the personnel for the super pod at Disneyland, the first one.
Oh,
And
I
at the
didn't
training
realize
at the training facility over there, the joint training facility over there,
Yes.
adjacent to Anaheim Stadium.
Yes.
They did the first prep and the first training and the rest, and then helped deploy the super pod at Disneyland as well. So that's kind of an interesting side note and a connection back to the pandemic and where we are. I'm excited. We broke ground on a new fire station, Fire Station 1.
Yes.
It's going to be a couple of blocks down the street from where we're sitting right now, and that's long overdue. The property was actually acquired back in 2003, and so we've broken ground. We're under construction. We're expecting to have a ribbon cutting and a grand opening and going into service the middle of next year.
Okay.
So it's a tight schedule, but I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get to that. And the other thing I love, that project was budgeted original cost for the bonding at $34 million. And ultimately, with good interest rates and the rest, we came in at $23 million, so an $11 million reduction
Good work.
in cost there. So that's another positive thing. Any business would like to have those sorts of opportunities, right? So I can't leave out the police department, and would never leave out the police department. Chief Casella and his guys have done a great job, especially in uncertain times. The level of calls are up. The kinds of calls are broader. Folks are scared. They're concerned. I can go on and on about the breadth of things that both our police and firemen have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But they continue to deliver 24/7 and do the work that really provides the quality of life, in my opinion, that the city of Orange expects and enjoys. And they could just continue to be amazing. One thing that was prepared, and we actually had budgeted, and we're doing it long before the pandemic hit, is we're deploying a new camera system both in car and on personnel for the entire police department. And that's important for a couple of reasons. One, the collection of evidence and the evidence chain via video, both car and individual. That chain is easily documented, and also to maintain that information moving forward is more easily dropped. But as well, it provides a transparency in law enforcement and for law enforcement with the community as well.
Right.
We're fortunate in Orange. The Orange community trusts and loves the police department and the fire department, as well as hopefully the entire city of Orange. But this is just another way to demonstrate that transparency. And frankly, it's safer for the officers in this particular circumstance as well. So I'm proud that they stepped forward and put that together. Some folks asked me and said, oh, well, with some of the challenges and some of the things going on, does that mean that, did you guys react and do that? But those were actually budgeted, funded, and ordered prior to the pandemic. And the department was behind it 100%, and it's in process and in play coming in now. So it's a good thing.
When is that going to be deployed? Is it?
I'm going to leave that to the police chief to
Okay.
give us an absolute date and also the breadth of the deployment as well. But it's interesting in that it's both body cam as well as car cam, and so the collection angle of that as well as the transparency is much better than one or the other.
Right. I
So.
would definitely agree. I did have a question that just came in, and it is, how has the pandemic influenced your own personal leadership? Any lessons learned or practices you'd like to continue?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I probably had a little bit of an advantage, and that is that I've worked remotely in my professional life for 20 years. I was employed with Hewlett-Packard and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise a global account manager for them. And I worked from a home office using the predecessors to Microsoft Teams and other meeting types of things on the days that I wasn't traveling, or even the days I was traveling, to reach out to clients as well as the sales teams, because I had a worldwide responsibility. And so it wasn't as big an adoption for me as many that had to figure out how to spell Zoom and the rest of it. But I think the biggest thing is a couple things. One, stop and listen first. It's amazing what you pick up when you listen, and adapt what you're doing, and reach out and solicit that assistance. People are more than willing to help, I find.
Right.
But many times people don't get asked. And so those are things that came about in this. And the other thing too is just the importance of reaching out. If it has to be virtual, it has to be virtual, but staying in contact with people. And it's so easy to let days lapse by, especially if you're not working, you're working out of the house, etc. But it's so important to stay connected and the rest. I can't imagine what would have happened. I know that we would have had a much more challenging time had we not had the robust set of network and video conferencing and the rest. I mean, I'm thankful, frankly. If it had to happen, I would have rather the pandemic never happened, obviously, like everyone. But think of what the challenge would have been if we'd have done this 20 years ago and had this pandemic 20 years ago instead of now, in terms of the ability of being able to reach out, doing what we're doing right now, having this talk and having people out, watching and hopefully sending in questions and the rest. All that is something different. I think as well, it provides an opportunity to see the value of virtual meeting and the rest. And I think it'll change business practices with a lot of entities. I know I've had discussions. I serve on the OCTA board, amongst others, and I've had a conversation, more than one, with the CEO of OCTA as virtual versus in office, what the balance should be.
Right.
Should it be a reward for high performing employees? Should it be done remotely wherever it can be, without any degradation of service? I mean, all those things that I know private enterprise is going through that discussion, and I think governmental agencies will do the same thing. I know we're going to be much different when we have meetings at City Hall. We've remodeled the chambers. As I mentioned, we needed 7 seats up there instead of 5, but also the communications side of it, the broadcast side of it, and the rest, to make sure that people that want to follow the council and what's going on have the opportunity to do so as conveniently as possible. And so, I think those are the things, the most important things. And the other thing that I don't think it's necessarily a learned thing, but just recognize that how important family and friends are, and stay connected to them, right?
Right.
So that's what I learned.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure, of course. You know what?
We have a video.
How did you know? Who is it? I know.
Okay,
It's Grocer's Outlet, and it's a video with Mike and Melanie McCormick, and they were the small business of the year.
They were. With
the chamber this year, and it was fun going out and seeing them when they got their award, and I'm glad we sent somebody back out to chat with them a little bit. And I think, again, you're going to see this synergy between the business community and the nonprofit community and charities and medical and the rest in this next video. So let's take a listen.
All right.
I grew up here, so this is my home. Hi, I'm Mike McCormick.
I'm Melanie McCormick.
And we're from Orange Grocery Outlet. Orange Grocery Outlet is a discount supermarket. We sell most products at 70% less than your conventional supermarket. We also sell fresh produce, fresh dairy, fresh meat, and all the staples you would expect to find. So when COVID first affected our business, we've had to adapt to the safety precautions. We've done things like seniors, curbside pickup. They call us ahead of time. We'll get their items and bring them in. We worked a lot with Orange North Rotary and the Senior Center as far as getting product out to seniors.
Orange Grocery Outlet has been very active within our community within this last year since we've owned this location. We've partnered with Orange Senior Center, Youth Centers of Orange, Friendly Center, Assisted Leagues of Orange.
Okay, we also raised money last July for the Friendly Center and for the Youth Centers of Orange, just through asking customers for donations and offering them a $5 coupon to come back once they've given the donation.
We're very passionate about our community. My parents ran a business in the city of Orange for over 28 years. So when we were told that we won Business of the Year through the Chamber of Commerce, we were absolutely humbled, honored, grateful for the opportunity, and we couldn't have done it without this amazing community within Orange.
Just want to say a thank you to the Orange community for supporting us. They've been great. We get comments all the time from people coming in here and just saying they like shopping in the small town feel, helping a small business. I still think this is the nicest place, nicest community in Orange County.
I grew up in this city and love it, love the community.
Well, there's that theme of interconnectivity for sure.
Absolutely.
So a tie-in to Assistance League, the Chamber and the Assistance League are going to come together to provide vaccines to all City of Orange restaurant employees, and that just started coming together as of today, I believe, today or this week sometime. So everyone, please go ahead and check back on our website if you are employed at a restaurant in the city to look out for that information.
That's great. That's great. Yet another opportunity for vaccination, and the quicker we get vaccinated, the quicker things get back to a new version of normal, whatever that is, right?
We'll have to see what new version of normal looks like.
Yeah, one other thing that came to mind when you were talking is the other piece to the puzzle during the pandemic, and another group that has severe challenges along the way is our entire education groups, from public and private schools, universities, all the way through kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, right?
Right.
Had a chance to be principal for the day. We only did it virtually, of course, at Cambridge Elementary, and we talked about the challenges of just keeping the attention span of 3rd, 4th, 5th graders when you have most of them on notebooks or iPads. Mm-hmm. And obviously, the technological savvy of youngsters, they figure out very quickly it's easy enough to punch the button and suddenly be disconnected and oops, I can't go to school, right? Some of those things. So I heard some of that, but thinking about all the contingency planning the city did, it's multiplied for our universities, Chapman University, San Diego Canyon College, as well as our public and private schools, OUSD, and all the private education in the city as well. And my hats go off to all those folks as well, because they not only had to become virtually fluent, but almost magician-like in their ability to continue to teach under really challenging conditions. So it's another area where there's probably lessons learned and there's options, and we're still in that transition now where some are coming back, some are going back, some still have elected to stay at home, and the rest. And so it's another part of this pandemic that will leave impacts for a long, long time, I believe.
For sure. Well, one issue that I feel like really has been perhaps exacerbated a bit by the pandemic is homelessness. It's something that we talk about frequently, just in different circles among the community. What has been added, or has anything been added to assist with that issue this year or last year?
It's a good question, and you're absolutely right. The challenges for those that don't have permanent residence are exacerbated during a pandemic scenario as well. Certainly calls for service, that's back to what we talked about before.
Right.
That goes up. But we have collectively teamed with different sections of the county. The northern cities, for instance, put their planning group together, and we co-funded 2 different centers for homeless individuals to get services, to get off the street, and to get started on a better life. They're called navigation centers.
Okay.
So we have beds available at those 2 centers, and have had now for the better part of a year, actually maybe a little bit more than that. For the first one, there's one in Buena Park and one in Placentia that we're a part of, fund and continue to fund as we move along. Secondly, I'm proud to say that we approved some affordable and housing, 61 units. We put the property up, which is a part of the old Corp Yard, and they are directed for families that are transitioning out of the homeless situation and out of one of a navigation center, that type of thing, into these facilities that will be maintained as affordable units and directed and services directed as well there as a part of the development. That was approved a couple of 3 months ago, and the building will begin very soon on those 61 units as well. And that's something I'm very proud of too, because it's again a creative developer who specializes in affordable housing, somebody that has multiple projects, successful projects in the city of Orange, came to us and said, hey, what if we could do this? And a city manager and staff that said, yeah, let's figure out a way to do it. And ultimately it became a piece of the Corp Yard that we could spare to do something important like that. And so to me, it's a really good thing that again has come out of these last 12 months. One other thing too that I would be remiss, and something that I think the city should be very proud of, as well as the council.
Right.
And that is, are you familiar with the Be Well OC Center?
I am. I have taken a look at it and it's amazing.
Well, we asked and they sent out and did an interview, and I think rather than me talking too much about it up front, I'd rather go to the interview and let Marshall and Dr. Clayton Chau. Dr. Chau is from the Orange County Healthcare Agency. He's the executive director and has been great to work with over this the vast majority of the pandemic and the rest. But he was one of the movers on this. But this is a partnership between the county, the city, a number of nonprofits, a number of healthcare agencies to provide mental health services to those who need it most. So I can tell the story about Marshall, and Dr. Chau will tell it even better than I do. So let's go to the video if we could.
Perfect.
The Be Well campus in Orange is the first of its kind in the country. This is the very first effort. We're very excited, and I'm grateful that the city of Orange hosts the very first campus here in Orange County. Hi, I'm Dr. Clayton Chau. I'm the Orange County Healthcare Agency Director, as well as the County Health Officer. The Be Well Center in the city of Orange is the first very important collaboration, and I'm grateful that the city of Orange hosts the very first campus here in Orange County. We came together almost 4 years ago to find solutions to transform and create a system of behavioral health services for all of 3.2 million people in Orange County. This is the very first effort. We're very excited. It is care at the right time, at the right place, by the right people.
Be Well Orange County is a community collaborative. It's an inspired movement of the whole Orange County community coming together as one unified effort to transform our mental health system across this county. Hi, I'm Marshall Moncrief, Chief Executive Officer of MindOC, the small not-for-profit engine that runs Be Well Orange County. In the city of Orange, Be Well is going to be tremendously valuable for the community that needs support for mental health or substance use. And so I think for many people, they have in their mind's eye that it's somebody else that has those problems. And I'll tell you that it's all of us. If you're on Medi-Cal and you need help, we're going to wrap a hug around you and bring you in. If you have a Blue Cross PPO plan, we're going to wrap a hug around you and bring you in. If you happen to be struggling with homelessness and you have nothing, we're going to wrap a hug around you and bring you in. So this really has become a truly shared community asset where we can hold hands together and start to repair the entire system from this cornerstone.
The city of Orange was the first city to raise its hand and said, we are in supportive of the campus, we are in supportive of the Be Well movement, and we want to see a regionalized effort.
And we're grateful to the City of Orange for leading the charge and putting what is a national model right here in the city.
Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your belief in mental health and addiction care. I look forward to more collaboration in the future.
Be Well couldn't have opened at a more critical time in our city and our county's history, for sure. That's really exciting.
Yeah, it's as the first one in the nation, which again, Orange is proud to be a part of that. But I think as well, it's important because I think the success here is going to definitely, produce additional sites. I know there's at least a second site identified in Orange County, and it's sorely needed as well. It's providing some services available no other place, and I'm happy to say as well, they've been great to work with our safety services and the rest when we come across people that need that level of care and support. So my hat's off to the whole Be Well OC team, and not only the partnering agencies, but certainly the staff that works there has a passion for what they do, and it shows both in the design of this project as well as the services they provide. So it's really something special to have it here in the city of Orange.
Yeah, we are very excited about it. So welcome, Be Well OC. I want to put like a side note. I wanted to volunteer there, so if you guys are watching, let me volunteer.
Marshall, Dr. Chau, right here.
Well, what can our residents expect for 2021 and 2022 in terms of services and events?
Well, I'm going to stay optimistic, okay?
Okay.
If things trend and continue to trend the way they're going, I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm not supposed to say this tonight, but I'm going to go ahead and say it, and because I'm confident it's going to happen. Our staff is already putting together tentative plans for some events in the fall, and maybe sooner if it would allow. But it's my desire, and assuming it's safe to do so, I'd like to get some live music back at Hart Park.
Okay.
So concerts in the park maybe will present themselves a little later and a little different, but I'm hoping to do some of that. And then obviously our treats in the streets and our tree lighting and the rest of those things we'll do as allows. It has to be safe.
Right.
It has to be something that folks can enjoy, but I really hope we don't have to do another whole virtual year when it comes to those sorts of events. Orange is a community that likes to celebrate its history, likes to celebrate its holidays, and I'm staying optimistic that based on the trends as I see them today, here in March, that we're able to see some things like that happen. I mentioned some of the departments. I haven't mentioned all of the departments yet, and I may not get to, given that I know we're on a strict time constraint. But one thing that our finance department came up with, along with the executive staff, and that's a savings strategy. Okay. And one of our biggest obligations is our unfunded pension liability, and we put together a strategy and capitalized on the interest rates currently to do pension obligation bonds. And the best way I can translate that for layman's terms, rather than going into all the detail of it, is the savings, projected savings today over the next 23 years of obligations. You're seated, right?
I'm seated.
Okay, $134 million.
Wow.
So just do the math, and you can kind of get a per year idea of savings, and that's money that is now made available for other services and the rest, and saved, and reserves and the rest that would have ordinarily gone strictly to costs of employment, pension costs. And I'm really pleased with the group that put it together. We capitalized on a timing of interest and the rest that made it a very compelling argument. And it's going to contribute to the benefits in the city of Orange from services standpoint for the next 25, 30 years plus.
Well, that's great work.
So it's really, really something that everybody can be proud of, I think. Other programs that got implemented. We talked back about how do you do things different or whatever. Put together a senior meal gap program, they called it.
Okay.
And with some of the funding from the federal government as well, put together gift cards for 365 seniors to provide meals and also take out from restaurants and the rest. And those benefits were $500 per family.
Wow. Okay.
And to our seniors in town. And in partnership with Orange Elderly Services, who I think was mentioned in at least one of the videos as well, we put together, this is community services again, they're the ones that do our events and the rest too. They put together a weekly meal delivery service to homebound seniors using taxis to deliver those meals, so they were delivered safely, they were delivered without human contact. The usual, the Meals on Wheels services and those things obviously couldn't be done during the pandemic. So this was another way to make sure that at least on a weekly basis that there were meals out to homebound seniors to make sure they had a meal, nutritional meals to enjoy during the week. Fire Station 2 has been remodeled. As you might guess, 50 and 60-year-old fire stations have a height challenge in terms of apparatus, new apparatus, and so you drive by Station 2, you'll immediately recognize the change and the difference. But it's been updated, and now will house the newest of our fire apparatuses and the rest. We also, and something I feel really strongly about, is leveraging technology for the best use and best services in our community. It's where I grew up, where I came from in terms of professional career, and so there is both a citizens reporting application that'll be released before the end of June that will allow folks that either have a request or a report of something unsafe, something they see that needs our attention, et cetera. They can do that electronically without having to call, without having to leave messages, et cetera, et cetera. But also, as important is we're going to totally revamp our website, and that'll be probably by the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
But make it a little more user-friendly and provide even more outreach and services. One of the things we found during the pandemic is what are the best ways to communicate? And what ways can you communicate to get timely information out? And some of the changes we're making around these apps and also our website itself is going to make a lot of difference from that end as well.
I think an app will be really helpful. I know everyone loves apps.
That's what I hear. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. How would we live without our respective personal phones, whether it be iPhone or otherwise?
Giant Chromebook.
Oh, giant Chromebook. That sounds handy. You can, well, anyway, all joking aside, the idea is, again, to automate to where we can deliver more services with the same amount of people. If you look at our budget, on our ratios of employees versus service area, or employees versus square miles, however you want to measure it, we compare very, very favorably with most of our surrounding neighbors. And that's because we're pretty conservative in our hiring practices, but we also find people that are willing to go above and beyond the call of duty for delivering on the quality of life issues. I've said multiple times that the council's job is pretty straightforward. It's set the planning, set the direction, push the buttons, and agree. But it's every one of those employees that deliver on those promises, that deliver on that direction each and every day. So, we're fortunate from that end. One other thing too, talking about collaborations with Orange Unified School District.
Yes.
I mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
Our libraries coordinated, and last summer they did a grab and go lunch program out at the El Medina Branch Library and served over 1,100 meals to kids, that some of whom maybe that's the only meal they get that day. You just never know.
Right.
This whole challenge with food availability and the rest is crazy in our times and on our technology and basis. But this is another great way where our school district and the city and the library services, provide a solution to a need, if you will. So that Again, something else that came up during the pandemic. It was all done safely. It was done under the jurisdiction of the county and the healthcare agency, but we made sure that 1,100 more individuals got food from that particular perspective. The water department said I needed to make sure and mention that there's a new water well that's just been drilled, number 28. I'm not allowed to say where it is for security purposes, but it is out there. And I've got several more, but you know what? I'm going to say, why don't we look at the next video, because I really like this video too. This is the Chamber's awardee for Nonprofit of the Year.
I know who that is.
You do? Who is it?
Community Foundation of Orange.
That's right. So let's see what Dave Simpson has to say.
Okay.
Being part of something bigger than yourself for the City of Orange is like no feeling you could ever have. Hi, I'm Dave Simpson, President of the Community Foundation of Orange. The Community Foundation of Orange was founded in the year 2000, and it was a call from the community to find funds for Grijalva's sports complex. We raised the funds, and 11 years later, the doors opened. We ventured into things with seniors, veterans, and kids. We look for opportunities to give back to the community. So at the onset of COVID, the Community Foundation put our heads together and thought of ways we could serve the community. And we partnered with Orange Homegrown to make all these community signs that you see throughout the city. And we raised money not just for the vendors at Orange Homegrown, but for Waste Not OC for food insecurity here in Orange County. So over the years, you may know the Community Foundation of Orange for events such as the Community Foundation Games, which attracts 1,600 kids from Orange schools to participate in track and field events. Another event you might know us for is the Field of Valor, held in November around Veterans Day. And what we do is we take over Handy Park with the assistance of the City of Orange and put up 1,776 flags to honor veterans in the community. It's up for a week, it's a free event. Every penny we raise, we give back to the community and to the military families. We just recently started CPR, Community Partnership Resources. And what that does is we're trying to effort to find organizations that need volunteers and match our volunteers and our efforts to those needs. We just did this with the Orange Senior Center, providing meals each week for those that need it. I love my town. It's a great town, and we wanted to find ways to give back. We all do want to do that. So what do? You look for an opportunity. I found one with the Community Foundation of Orange, and we'd love to have you be part of our events in our organization.
I'm going to have to say interconnectivity was just like our unofficial theme for sure. So thank you again, Community Foundation of Orange. And actually as well, I want to thank all of our business awardees this year. So that was Home Depot, large business, grocery outlet, small business, and the Community Foundation of Orange for the nonprofit of the year. Well, it looks like we have just a smidge of time left, and so there were a couple questions that came in. I saw them come through here on Facebook through our moderator. The biggest one, I believe, is the vacancy. So we have a vacancy in District 3.
I've heard that, yeah.
Chat about that for just a quick second.
Sure. We have a vacancy that was created with the resignation of Mike Alvarez. The process is well documented on how we go from here. Mm-hmm. We have the opportunity over 60 days from the time the vacancy was created to consider appointing an individual. If we appoint an individual, that person would only be in that position until the next regular general election, which would be in November of 22. And then that individual would either stand for election again or decide not to run. But the general election of 22 would be in play. If we chose or could not come to an agreement on an appointment for whatever reason, then there would be a special election that would be established. Be about $150,000 to do that election because it's a standalone. Even though it's a district and it's small and all that, it's still $150K to do that. and it's not small, it's 1/6 of the city,
Right.
right, and in voter terms. But if that were the path, then that election would take place this November, and then it would be for 3 years, though. It would be all the way till 2024.
Okay.
So those are the differences, folks. It's a little confusing because if you appoint, then the election's sooner. If you don't appoint, and there's a special, the election's longer, the term is longer.
Right.
But it's the process was prescribed as a part of the movement to districts, and so it's well documented from that end. What we'll do, we'll have to see. We have a couple of meetings still in that window of time of 60 days.
Okay.
And we'll move on from there. We'll see what happens from that end of things. But you know, there's still 6 of us up there, so there's plenty of
Plenty of people in charge.
So absolutely.
Thank you, and thank you for telling us about that process.
Sure.
It looks like we are near the end.
Okay.
So I wanted to know if you have any final words for our business community.
Well, you know, again, I just want to say thank you. The business community is so resilient. Wait a minute. Fire department's going by. I don't know if you can hear that or not. It's been so resilient during these times and so cooperative during these times. And we've asked you to do things that are totally unnatural from a business standpoint in the sake of health. And you guys have delivered and continue to deliver it. And those that are closed, Mike Leorakis talked about the pandemic creating new opportunities and new ways to look at his business. And others have mentioned it along the way as well. I just want to say thank you for what you've done to make things as easy as possible during these very difficult times. And again, my thanks to everyone, the residents, those that come to school here, those that work here, and the businesses for doing what we can to get back out of this as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, and that we can get back to whatever our new normal is and enjoy those celebrations that I hinted about earlier on in the thing. But I also want to say thanks to the Chamber of Commerce. You know, the Chamber stepped up day one and had ideas and suggestions day one, and then followed through on them, made them happen. And I really appreciate that. That's something the Chamber, Orange will always be in the debt to the Chamber for doing the right things at the right times to help wherever possible. And it wasn't a matter of saying yes or no. You knew the answer was yes. It was just how are we going to get there.
Right.
So I want to say thanks
You're
as
welcome.
well. And thanks for the opportunity this evening too. You can tell I'm a little shy and I don't like to talk much, but all things considered, I hope that we were able to answer a few questions. And you know, my email's mayor@markamurphy.com. It's really easy to find, and happy to you know, answer things if I didn't quite give all the details or you want to learn something additional or not. You know, we can do that. Now, do you want a funny story as an ending for the pandemic, or an ironic story? It's sort of funny, it's sort of ironic.
Let's do it.
Okay, are you sure?
I'm positive.
Okay. I get emails at least a half a dozen a week now.
Okay.
For a while, I was getting 30 to 40 a week, addressing me as the mayor of Orange County.
That is not the case.
Well, it's not the case, but do you know why? When you Google mayor of Orange County, it selects which words it finds, and so what pops up first? Mayor of Orange. So myself and the mayor, there is a mayor of Orange County down in Florida, so I'm guessing he's getting some of the mail as well. But I mean, we've been doing our best. To those that have emailed me,
Yeah.
we've been doing our best to connect you with the right
mayor.
people in the right places and the right things. But
Right.
Unintended consequence of all this, and I never ever could imagine. I finally started asking a couple of people that email me from Yorba Linda and from San Clemente and from other places in the county as to, oh gosh, how did you find me? And that was the answer. So back to that technological thing. Technology is wonderful, but you got to make sure you know how to manage the information so it does the best for you. And with that, I'll be quiet and let you finish off. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. We know that you're very, very busy. So we appreciate that. Thank you again.
Sure.
I have a couple of things before we close. I wanted to tell you guys about some events that we have coming up. So there's quite a few actually. We have a Lunch and Learn April 13th at noon. That's going to be a tactical approach to sales and profit. That's going to be on Zoom. We have our business networking group on April 21st at 5 p.m. That will also be on Zoom. Our next Eggs and Issues, which is on April 27th at 9 a.m., will be Congressman Lou Correa. Also, stay tuned for more information as we are turning 100 years old. So we're going to be putting out some information. We have a 100th anniversary committee put together. We've got some great things in store for you, so be excited about that and keep an eye out on our social media and on our website for all of those details. Well, thank you again to our sponsor, Southern California Edison. Also, thank you to our Chairman's Circle members. You are always top of mind, and we thank you so much for your continued support. Communications Lab, team out there behind the cameras. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight for us and opening up your studio to myself and to the city, our mayor here. Irma and Connie, our chamber staff, thank you so much for being here as well tonight. And that is all I have. So thanks again. Good night. We will see you soon.